Hello and welcome to the Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Twitch, and I still don't know what that is. Our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community. Without you, we couldn't make the show each week. A huge welcome on that score to Daniel Dewey, who's joined our Bobby Stokes tier in the last week. Thanks, Daniel. We appreciate your support. A huge thanks also to Pitter Self-Drive for sponsoring this episode. Pitter Self-Drive are a homegrown Southampton business who's been trading since 1985, and they're also lifelong Saints fans. You may have seen their name around St Mary's as they currently advertise on the big screens and do loads to support the Saints Foundation. They offer cars, vans, trucks and minibus hire at very reasonable prices. They're flexible on short-term or long-term rental needs, always available to help and operate a 24-hour drop-off service. They're offering TSP listeners 10% off your rental with the code TOTALSAINTS, which is all one word. You can use the code when booking online or just quote the code you're booking over the phone. To find more or get in touch, head to pitterselfdrive.co.uk or call 02380 474 443. If you've missed any of the information, it's all in the podcast show notes and YouTube description. Coming up this week on the podcast, reviews of the first three festive fixtures that we've had, which are Queen's Park Rangers away and home games against Swansea and Plymouth Argyle. Spoiler alert, we won all of them. Also, a preview of the fourth one, a New Year's Day game at Carrow Road against Norwich City. For that, we'll be joined by Connor Southwell of the PinkUn. After that, we'll have a brief look at the FA Cup third round home game against Walsall. It says on the script that my name is Martin Stark, but it isn't. Martin's not here today, and we couldn't get anyone else. So you're stuck with me. My name is Glen, and like the linesman against Plymouth, I'll be making a lot more mistakes than Martin ever does. And today is a special TSP for the new year because I won't be waffling any long answers. I'll be leaving that to Steve Grant, the owner of SaintsWeb in particular, and Alfie House, the senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo. Underpinned by TSP patrons, this is episode 257 of the Total Saints podcast. First up, the weekly shout out for our Patreon community whose monthly contributions support the show. We have 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. Aside from supporting the podcast, each of these tiers has perks like access to an ad-free version of the podcast, exclusive TSP t-shirts and merch bundles, the TSP Fantasy Premier League, which I'm doing very, very well in at the moment, if anyone wants to check it out, and access to our TSP events and much more. If you want to get involved in supporting TSP each month, head over to patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast for more details. All the links are in the podcast show notes and YouTube descriptions. Right, football. Martin triggers my OCD every week if we have 2 games by not going chronologically. So to start with, we're going to cast our minds back to the game that was many days and much alcohol ago. So game number 1, Queen's Park Rangers at Loftus Road. 1-0 win secured by Taylor Harwood-Bellis from a set piece with a restricted view for most people. So, Steve, I know you were there. How was the ludicrously expensive trip? And could you see anything? And was it worth the money?
It was fine for me. I haven't been to Loftus Road quite a few times now. You kind of get used to whereabouts in that away end is half decent to see anything and where isn't. So basically, if you want prime seat, then upper tier, front couple of rows, or basically anywhere in the lower tier is your best bet. So I went for the much cheaper lower tier, only £31. What a bargain that was, by the way, rather than the £38 that people had to fork out in the upper tier, which is frankly absolutely outrageous. But no, it was good. It was weird. The first half was kind of a little bit end to end without either side really creating anything of any note. It was just one of those games where QPR had a little bit of energy and kind of channeled it all through their best player Ilias Chair down the left flank. And in fairness to him, we basically couldn't get the ball off him all afternoon. And fair play to him for that. But fortunately, final ball, whether it's from him or any of the other QPR sort of wide players, wasn't great. partially probably because Lyndon Dykes was doing his best impression of a statue and wasn't really moving too much up front to
Absolute donkey,
get on the
isn't
end of anything. Yeah, he wasn't great, and also I think we defended that final third pretty well, as we kind of have been doing recently. We seem to have learned what we need to do on that front. Although I will still continue banging the drum of stop the cross until I'm blue in the face. But that I think that was probably the only frustration, that we actually let them put those crosses in, because arguably a better side would have had somebody getting themselves on the end of them, and then we could have been in a little spot of bother. But get the goal right on half time. Howard Bellis with the freedom of the QPR 6-yard box. Quite how we ended up with that much room. I mean, I guess QPR's league position probably tells you the answer to that, doesn't it?
I'll tell you what. When I saw that goal, if you watch all the replays, the defender that's supposed to be marking him somehow ends up on the deck, and he's
about
he's
10
nowhere,
yards away, isn't he? Yeah.
But I haven't seen a TV angle that proves anything, whether he slipped or whether Howard Bellis threw him over or whatever. I just wondered.
And there weren't any appeals either from any defenders, so I don't know if the guy who was supposed to be tracking him just slipped. But yeah, he ends up with so much room, and he kind of almost did well to nearly miss from the position he was in. From where I was stood, it looked as if he completely shanked it, but it's only on replays where actually he's caught it quite nicely, and it's gone right in the corner. Second half, what pleased most of us the most was that we kept on attacking and trying to score the second goal. We didn't just sit in on the lead, where a side like QPR, much like Huddersfield, when you know that there's only probably one or two avenues where they can score, if you sit in, then you run the risk of them being able to little bit of luck, maybe a little bit of quality play, and all of a sudden they find a goal from somewhere, and you're then kind of scrapping to keep hold of the game. But we didn't do that. We were still positive, looking to, still largely hitting them on the counter attack. I thought for the most part, but we looked a lot more effective. Should have won by more, really. Shay Adams has missed one absolute stinker, having done the hard work in chasing the defender's clearance down. Gets himself in on goal, and he's got basically the whole goal to aim at, and decides that flicking the ball with the outside of his right foot to try and lob Asmir Begovic, who's about 6'8", was the best move. It's like just decision making in that final moment is basically why Shay Adams is kind of the player he is, in that he's probably too good for this level, but not good enough for the level above. So yeah, that was the frustrating thing, that we didn't take those couple of clear-cut chances. Shay Charles had another one slightly earlier, I think, set up by Fraser, where ultimately Begovic has probably had a relatively simple save by his standards to make. I'd have liked Shay Charles to probably hit it in the near post, because I think the keeper's probably then wrong-footed. But that's maybe picking hairs on for a guy who's
to be fair to Shay Charles, he's not a goal scorer, is he?
Yeah, he's not one you're going to pick to score goals regularly. So it is what it is. But then he obviously then went and got himself sent off. I was going to proper take one for the team yellows. Those were the first one. I don't mind. The area that's in, it's in they're moving into a dangerous area. But the second one, I just kind of think, just let him run. It's literally on the edge of their area. So you've got another 85, 90 yards to run into. There was no real danger there. It just felt unnecessary, really. But it's instinct, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going. If anything, funnily enough, I thought the other way round. I thought the first yellow card, he was running into Bednarek. Whoever it was that he impeded. But the second one was interesting. I was going to say, Alfie, it strikes me in this league that you can get away with some tactical fouls if you're a little bit subtle about it. Does Shay Charles need to work on that a little bit, because the clothesline across the throat you're not going to get away with that, are
I think
you?
he got away with one yesterday, I think, to be fair. But I think they said that the lads actually applauded him in the dressing room at full time, which I think is maybe a little bit of an overzealous reaction. But at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do at the time. I actually agree with you. I think that the first one felt a little bit pointless. I thought the Jan Bennett was going to come across to his left and cover that one, and the second one looked a little more dangerous. But I suppose you can see it differently. But I mean, it feels weird talking about the QPR game, which was like 7 days ago. I'm sort of operating on a 1 day brain basis at the moment, where I'm sort of receiving information and discarding it by 9 a.m. next morning. But I thought but it was so important to get that win, wasn't it? Because obviously it was sold out away and people have paid a lot of money to be there. And the last game before Christmas, and I think it was the second of 3 clean sheets in a row as well. I saw a comment I wanted to actually just mention if I could, because somebody, Ryan, put in the chat saying Colin Calder has been a massive factor in our improved defensive performances. And I asked Russell Martin about that, and obviously it's not a coincidence completely. He came in at the time when those sort of performances started to improve. But Russell did say that he's actually not doing like 5 days a week at the moment. He's still sort of assessing some of it from afar. He isn't really getting much training ground time with the players as of about a week or two ago. He's most sort of advising the staff on a few things. But he is there now. He's sort of helped take over on set pieces as well since Andreas George is in. So I think you have to give him credit for what he's done. But I think it is a little bit reductionist to sort of give Colin all of the praise. But yeah, sure, welcome addition.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the defence tightened up a little bit. It was unfortunate that James Bree got injured, but I think it helped a little bit with Kyle switching over to Ilias Chair's side. He seemed to shut him down a little bit. But no, I thought that win was massively important for the fact that was it drawn 3 away games in a row, and it was it was nice to get over the line in one. But anyway, moving on. Game number 2, Boxing Day at St Mary's against Swansea in the Russell Martin derby, or as it's alternatively known, the petty compensation argument derby. It's a big game for me personally because my sister is married to a Swansea fan who I saw, of course, over Christmas. So I thought this would, for all sorts of reasons, be a sod's law game to lose. And thankfully, I was wrong. Alfie, how was Russell Martin in the build-up to this one, in interviews that you did with him? Any different to any other game, or was he able to put all that aside?
Well, I think obviously with his words exactly, he says it's exactly the same. You want to win every single game, but I think like we all know now that Russell is somebody who like wears his heart on his sleeve, and he is an emotional manager at times. And I think that he has a real connection with Swansea. I think he actually got a good reception from them at the game as well, to be fair. But he made a couple of jibes to the owners in sort of pre-match press conferences and stuff, because kept saying like the same things keep happening over and over again, all this sort of thing. And he was really sort of defensive of Alan Sheehan, the coach, obviously Nathan Jones' former assistant, who was absolutely dejected at full time when we spoke to him. I've never seen a man look so defeated. 2 terrible Boxing Days in a row at St Mary's for him. If you cast your mind back to losing 4-1 to Brighton last year, whoever it was. But so I think Russell feels for the Swansea fans massively. I think they're in a bit of a state at the moment, and that became increasingly apparent in the last sort of 20-25 minutes of that game, where they just completely combusted. I thought they were okay in the first half. They limited Saints to relatively little, but they just exploded at the end. Yeah,
I mean, it was kind of similar to the Blackburn game in that they had a bit of adversity and then totally fell to bits. This time it was the air shot, as with Blackburn, of course, it was the sending off. I mean, do you think it was? Do you think the 5-0 sort of flattered us at all, Alfie, or was that is that something we are more likely to do now, given that we are trying to put teams? Are we trying to put teams to the sword a little bit more and not just manage the game?
I think that's when I was speaking to a couple of people after the game. I think some people said that they felt Blackburn was a better performance overall. I wouldn't say that it flattered Saints, because I think it's been coming. I think Russell Martin even mentioned the Rotherham game again after Swansea. He'll never let it go. I'm pretty sure, but they have done that to teams where they've just sort of taken them side to side and torn them apart and not got the result. It just now seems like things are going in. And Joe Rebo was like a little bit lucky with the opening goal, right? But I'm trying to cast my mind back. There's so many goals now. I'm just going to flip over to who actually scored them. It's Ryan Fraser I want to talk about, because the impact that Ryan Fraser made against QPR was fantastic. Didn't get the sort of the end product, but his 2 finishes are unbelievable. And I suppose you could say that on any other Saturday they don't go in. Both of them either hit the bar or they ping off a defender or something. They did both go in the top corner. So I suppose you could say that's a little bit lucky, but in the day he's put it in the top corner.
Especially the way he was finished. He didn't finish any of those chances against Cardiff.
Yeah, because he must have had about 7 or 8 shots in that game in the last 20 minutes, and couldn't hit anything other than the goalkeeper. But But yeah, Steve, we had a bit of a strange selection when the 11 names were announced. We were looking at Jack Stevens and Harwood Bellis and Bednarek and thinking, are we going to go 3 at the back? In the warm-up, it was pretty obvious that it was going to be a back 4 with Kyle somewhere else. Do you think that worked, or is that something we're going to see going forward? Jack Stevens at right back, or do you think it's just whilst we're trying to manage this workload, it was something that happened?
I think it's partially workload management, partially also that I think Russell Martin just wanted to get Stevens in the side somehow, and he's kind of shoehorned him in to a little bit of an extent, I think. And you got Walker Peters playing sort of quite high on the right hand side. I mean, did it work? I mean, the result would say yes, but I think the performance in the first 45, 50 minutes, Swansea were comfortably in the game. Whereas once we started making changes, all of a sudden the game opens up and we look a lot more fluid. Whether that is down to Swansea collapsing and falling in a heap, there's probably a little bit of that. But also, I think Walker Peters, while he can obviously play as a sort of advanced wide player, I don't think quite like where he ended up in that Swansea game. I don't think that's quite where he would have envisaged when you say, "Oh, I'm an attacking fullback." Yeah, okay, let's stick you up at as one of the front 3 then. See how that goes. It doesn't. I think it kind of nullifies part of what makes him so good. In that it's the late runs from deep where he builds up a bit of momentum, and it's that momentum that takes him past fullbacks. Whereas when he's starting alongside them, he's got to generate the pace from the beginning. And he's not. While he's a quick player, he's not. I wouldn't say he's an explosive starter. He's one of those whose pace builds up as he's running. So I think you kind of lose, unlike say Sam Edozie, who can beat a man and has got that 3-5 yard pace. I don't think Walker Peters has quite got the same impact. So yeah, I would imagine that was. I mean, obviously we've seen it again. I mean, Stevens has obviously come in the same role again as a sub on Friday night and done the same role. But I think that's probably a kind of a setup that will be used very sparingly, if at all.
Yeah,
I do think we have to quickly shout Joe Rebo in those sort of first 2 games, and Sam Edozie as well, 100%. I mean, we do talk about them quite a lot, but I think they're both just genuinely unbelievable, and they just offer as much energy. And Joe Rebo looks like a completely changed man.
He does, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask Steve actually to expand on Sam Edozie, because to me he's added quite a lot in the last sort of 3-4 games since he's come back into the team. And there was criticism of him at the start of the season that he didn't have enough, or from last year that he didn't have any end product. And if you compare him to Sulemana, for example, it seems to me there's a hell of a lot more there. And I was really impressed with him. But Joe Aribo, you mentioned. There seems to be a place up for grabs in the midfield next to Downs and Stuart Armstrong when they're fit. We've tried Smallbone there, Shea Charles there, Charlie Alcaraz there. Joe Aribo's there at the moment. He's off to the AFCON, and Nigeria haven't named their he's in the big squad. They haven't cut it down to the 27 names, I think it is. How big a blow is this to him in regards to how he's doing? I mean, he obviously wants to go and play for Nigeria, so he personally probably won't see it as a blow. But having basically after a year got himself into the team, how big a blow is it for him and us, Alfie?
Well, I mean, the fact that you're asking how big a blow is it for Southampton, I think is real testament to what he's done. It's a good point, actually, isn't it? Because, like I say, he's worked so hard to get back into the team. Russell Martin's always said that he trains brilliantly. He's a fantastic bloke. He's finally got his chance, and he's taken it. He's putting in back-to-back solid performances. He looks quicker. He looks to an extent sharper, sort of more alert. He looks more aware of what's going on. The game isn't moving by him anymore. But he's going to be gone for 2-3 match weeks potentially at least. He should be available for Monday, but he will be gone after that, I imagine. So he'll miss Walsall and miss the 2 or 3 championship games after that. I think,
Nigeria are going to get out of their group as well.
It
doesn't look particularly difficult for them, so they're going to go sort of deep into the tournament.
And I suppose he's going at a good time.
It's an expanded tournament, isn't it?
How many teams are it nowadays?
24. So that's basically much like the European one. It's basically half the continent. So there's going to be some guff in there, I suspect.
He'll be leaving with goodwill. That's something to say. He'll be leaving with a lot of confidence, and when he comes back, he won't have gone off the back of a stinker or anything like that. Well, touch wood. Obviously, we haven't been to Norwich yet, so he might find his way back in. But the options at the moment are, like you say, Will Smallbone, Charlie Alcaraz did play in a slightly deeper role yesterday, wherever it was. So that would be probably one to look at. And maybe they'll bring somebody in January as well. I don't expect that to happen, if I'm being completely honest. So I think the place is still up for grabs, but it's up to Will Smallbone or someone like that to make it theirs. But I think that Russell really likes Joe Rebo. I think he does. So I think he'll probably come back in.
Yeah, because if the AFCON had been 3 months ago, no one would have cared, would they? Everyone would have just wondered what on earth he was doing to get in the Nigeria squad. But also, I see Nathan Teller's in on the long list, and so is Tall Paul.
Oh, there you go.
Tall Paul. Well, Nathan Teller will probably find another country to defect to just before he becomes useful. But I'm still bitter about that. Finally, on Joe Aribo, Steve, as a big cricket fan, are you happy about the personalised goal music, which is very T20 cricket style that we're getting? Spandau Ballet are not a band from the 80s that I want to be reminded of, but if Joe Aribo scores 20 goals between now and the end of the season, then happy days. What'd you make of that?
That was different, wasn't it? I mean, I'm surely the dubious goals panel was looking at that goal anyway, given the 2 deflections, one of which was going wide anyway. Just to be all sort of proper killjoy about it. But no, look, I mean, if the fans can come up with enough songs about all of the other players, because I mean, it's only until very recently that basically the only songs about players have been the players that most of us don't really rate very, very highly. So having some songs about our better players would be nice, given that they're obviously going to be the ones likely to be scoring most of the goals for us. And then you could tailor the goal music to the player.
We've had Che score, haven't we? We've had Che score a couple, and we've not had Love Will Tear You Apart. So obviously the DJs dropped the ball on that one, in my opinion.
I mean, they've obviously got to get their act in order in the sound room, haven't they? That's the long and short of it.
Okay, moving on. Last night, as I speak, we played Plymouth Argyle at St Mary's with a stupid 6 o'clock kickoff time. So everyone could arrive in a bad mood, those who managed to get there. Bad enough for the home fans, but a salute from me to the Argyle fans who made the trip in very big numbers. When you look at how many came down from Blackburn, for example, before Christmas. I was surprised at the sheer volume of Plymouth fans in the ground. Steve ended up being a lot more nervy than it should have been. But apart from the 10 minutes before they scored, it was probably a decent performance against the team, as their manager admitted, were just there not to get battered, really.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, we did batter them, didn't we? For the most part. First 20 minutes could easily have been 2 or 3 up. Adams narrowly offside inside the first 5 minutes. Hit the post. Keeper's made a couple of decent saves. Bodies on the line from the Plymouth defenders, and their out ball has been the counter attack, which, in fairness, they almost exploited pretty well in that first half when we basically committed too many forward a couple of times. It was noticeable actually from about half an hour up until half time that we were trying to force things. We'd obviously been frustrated by not scoring when we were playing fluidly in the first 20-25 minutes, and from 30 to 45 we were forcing it a little bit, trying to play the killer pass too soon, when kind of the whole premise of this system is patience. So if you have to play side to side between Harwood-Bellis and Bednarek before the pass through the line into midfield becomes available, so be it. Do it. Don't worry about any outside noise. And in fairness, in the first half, there is no kind of outside noise from the fans when even at 0-0 against a team that we should be beating on paper. There isn't that sort of impatient, come on, get it forward, type anxiety in the stands anymore, which is good. Shows that fans are learning and everyone's kind of on the same page now. It only kind of got, as you say, a little bit nervy in the last 5-10 minutes, really.
They kept playing the ball back to Gavin. Russell was fuming about it when he was speaking.
And understandably so. I mean, it's all well and good keeping possession and running the clock down, but actually, you could. Plymouth were there to be got at, as we showed for the vast majority of that game. We cut through them time after time, and it was only. I mean, their keeper was almost certainly their man of the match. I mean, don't think he particularly covered himself in glory with basically his non-effort for the second goal. But other than that, Hazard was he was their best player, I thought. So yeah, the chances were created. They weren't taken. But I didn't really see why that necessitated us changing and slowing the game down and going backwards all the time in that last sort of 5 minutes of normal time plus the 8 added. Because you then just invite them on, and Bazunu's taken an unusually heavy touch for him, and just hasn't quite got his feet sorted. I mean, in fairness to Hardy, he's quick on it and gets in there at the right time. And the only concern really is that the sort of 8 minutes or so after that, we looked rattled for the first time in weeks. And it was so unnecessary. Just kind of go back to what you used to, go back to what you know and what you've shown has worked. And there shouldn't be any problems. We've proven that against basically everyone we've come up against in the last 2 or 3 months. I just hope that when we go to Norwich, that is kind of out of everybody's mind and everything resets and right, okay, we're back to normal. It was noticeable actually that at full time, Bazunu was still getting his name chanted, which was good. So there was no sort of repercussions from the fan base for him, which you certainly wouldn't have seen this time last year. I think ultimately even though we absolutely battered them, we still kind of got away with that last 10 minutes or so. But yeah, fine. You move on. Take the 3. Get on with it.
Okay, Alfie, I kind of felt that we were a bit complacent at times in this game. I kind of feel like it's inevitable a little bit. If you've won or not lost for 17 games, that is a danger. Would you say that's sort of like the biggest danger we face in the home games in particular against teams that just want to sit and wait for a mistake?
Yeah, maybe obviously coming off the back of 2 really, really heavy wins as well. And like you say, 17 matches unbeaten. It's 2 off the club's longest unbeaten run in its 137-year history, which was back in 1921-22. So, it's no mean feat what they've done. I think you sort of excuse them. And I think Steve actually mentioned what I was going to say about Gavin Bazunu. Yes, he's taken a bad touch and then he's panicked. But when he's go back to get his bottle and his towel full time, people are chanting his name. So I think it's sort of that level of, it's not complacency, but, a mistake or something like that isn't punished by fans at this point. The atmosphere is really good. It is noticeable, isn't it, that the teams that come and sit back and play whatever you want to call it, a low block, 8 men behind the ball, whatever it is, they are the ones that Saints find it difficult to break down because to Blackburn, to their credit, and to Swansea as well, they actually both teams tried to play and ended up getting torn apart for it. And like you sort of alluded to, didn't you, that Neil Dewsnip, the interim boss at Plymouth, he'd said that he'd watched those 2 games and he decided very quickly that we weren't going to come to St Mary's and try and play. So that is a challenge that Saints face, and but they are getting over the line, aren't they? They're doing it, and we haven't even mentioned the fact, by the way, that Leeds and Ipswich both dropped points yesterday. So it's now 3 points off the top 2, something like that. 6 points clear of Leeds along those lines.
It's been a really good sort of period of results for that. I mean, I always go on about not worrying too much about the league table, just look after ourselves. But you can't help but be pleased when Leeds get beat. Anyway,
I think it's real belief. Well, yeah, true. Yeah. But it's breathed real belief in, because I tweeted about it yesterday. It's a little bit corny, cheese, whatever. But I do genuinely think that St Mary's right now the atmosphere is so good, and I think there'll always be a few, but I think the vast majority of people are very much on board with what this team is trying to do now. I think they really believe in the manager, they believe in the players. They've got players like Cour Peters who are just so exciting to watch, so much fun, and obviously we hope that he's here until the years more to come, and at least end the season, obviously. And so I think that they can afford a bit of complacency now. If they have a bad result, I don't think the world's going to fall apart. They might drop 4 points, 5 points behind, but I don't think the momentum is going to stop immediately. Whatever happens at Norwich, for example.
No, I mean we're obviously, well, you would think we're not going to go the rest of the season unbeaten. We are going to lose at some point, and people have just got to react in the right way and take into account that we have had this run, and there's no reason why we sort of can't pick it up again should we get a bad result. But back to the game, Steve. I was going to keep these two incidents separate, but I can't really. It's the disallowed goal for Plymouth and the superb goal by Charlie Alcaraz, who kind of came into the team as a rotation option because of Russell Martin decided to leave Joe Aribo and Flynn Downs out. Alcaraz scored that goal, but what did you make of the whole sort of incident with the disallowed goal and then straight out the other end?
I mean, it was something that was kind of observed in the first year of VAR in the Premier League, was that teams that would suffer of VAR disappointment, so they score a goal and the goal gets overturned on review, that within minutes, so many of them would then concede at the other end. And I think you've kind of seen a similar sort of scenario here. Obviously, it's not a video review by any stretch, but the fact that they've had that goal chalked off, having basically offered nothing going forward, it was at that moment the ball hit the back of the net. That was the perfect smash and grab away performance on their part. And then they look over and the linesman's flags up, and as it turns out, incorrectly. It was interesting because from where I was stood in block 40 behind the goal, you looked and you thought, well, I mean, how is he offside there? Considering where the cross has come in, it's only when you see on the replay that actually the is it Mamba? Mumba, sorry, who was their best player against us in the reverse game as well, and where he's actually stood offside just before the cross comes in, and he does that thing of stepping back to get onside at the right time. But I think because ultimately a linesman can't be looking in two different places at once, so the linesman's had a little view of him being offside, and then he's glancing at his sort of 11 o'clock to see the moment the ball gets put across. So I think in the linesman's mind, he thinks that's the correct decision. So you can
You've also got the crosser cutting back across Ryan Manning as well, so he goes right up to the byline and cuts back across before the ball comes in. So the actual the line of offside comes back as well. So all those factors playing in the linesman's mind.
Yeah, and obviously there's probably a few players who are kind of not quite in position and still celebrating before they realise that the flag's gone up. And I mean we break quickly, and I mean they literally don't get another touch of the ball before Charlie's bent it into the top corner. It was the first time they'd given us any space around the penalty area. And that's just a concentration thing. They've let their guard down for a split second, and ultimately that is the difference in games like this. Where, I mean, if they were playing a Sheffield Wednesday or a Rotherham, they'd have absolutely got away with that. But you're playing against one of the best sides in the league, which, I mean, we're actually comfortable saying that now, aren't we? Which is what?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
How fun's that? And at the end of the day, you expect players of his quality to be able to put the ball where he put it. And he's done exactly that. And great to finally break the deadlock, having threatened a lot in the first half. And I think ultimately once we got that first one, I think we would then be supremely confident that we would then go and add to that and maybe go on and win by another sizable margin.
Before you round up on the Plymouth talk, I did just want to say that Charlie Alcaraz was obviously named man of the match inside the stadium, but and Charlie's great, obviously, but I felt that was a real injustice to Taylor Howard-Bellis, who had one of the best centre-back performances I've seen in the Championship for a long time. I think he defended the box brilliantly, and obviously it's a simple spotted ball for over to Jay Adams, but the execution is fantastic. So again, keeping hold of him in the summer, that's the biggest prize for promotion, in my opinion.
Do you think they'll try and do something in the January transfer window to try and make that permanent?
I don't think they'll.
Is that
I
a
don't think they'll be able
possibility?
to. I don't think they'll be able to. I imagine that those sort of things with the clauses, they have to be. The loan has to run for a year, and Man City probably aren't going to sanction that because he could be worth quite a bit of money if Saints don't go up.
Yeah, I mean, I think throw a load of money at him, make him captain. I know we've got 7 captains already.
Well, he'll be a future captain, won't he? Without doubt.
What, sorry?
He'll be a future captain, whether it's this club or somewhere else, without doubt.
Yeah. Just on, I noticed that the VAR debate in the Championship has been ignited again. I think because this game was live on Sky. Plymouth fans on Twitter are wanting it, but then they've never had it before. Careful what you wish for, lad. Yeah. No one should want it in the Football League. But do you think we, as one of the bigger clubs, do you think we're like the Man United of the Championship? Do you think we get more decisions in our favour as a result? I mean, I counted them up a while ago, and I made it kind of 3 each. Ones that we'd had, ones that we probably would have got with VAR. I mean, to me, 32,000 in St Mary's or 30,000 or whatever, it doesn't feel like the most intimidating place to referee. But does anyone think that we do get more in our favour this year?
I think ultimately the teams that spend more time in the opposition penalty area are on balance going to get more decisions in attacking areas. I think that's kind of natural. The ones where you don't necessarily expect them are the ones like last night where it's in our defensive area. And as a result, it's kind of a little bit more down to a little bit of luck of the draw. But yeah, I think the sort of old adage of these things even themselves out over the season. I mean, that's utter nonsense. And then anybody who continues to trot this absolute nonsense out, just get in the bin.
I've been known to.
It's absolute garbage. I mean, you just look back at any of our seasons in the top flight, and you could probably pick out games where we've been completely conned, and yet there are very few where you think, oh Christ, we got lucky with that refereeing decision today, didn't we? But now we're at the top of the league, we're getting those calls go in our favour. So there's definitely something to be said for teams at the right end of the league certainly getting more than their fair share.
Yeah. Finally, on Plymouth, it's kind of hit the news that Russell Martin made waves by not wanting to meet a certain diminutive Saints fan. As Alfie is 6'4", I have to ask you, Steve, was it you?
Oh, it wasn't me. I'm 5'10". I got a good 3 inches.
Above the average there.
Height on our not particularly esteemed Prime Minister.
Okay, fair enough.
It was interesting seeing even Ed Chamberlain there was a photo of him in the back seat. You know that there's that one with Laetitia sat in the background looking particularly unimpressed while Sunak sat there grinning his face off. There's another one from a slightly different angle which has got Ed Chamberlain sat about 6 or 7 rows further back, and he looks equally unimpressed. So I think he's the Prime Minister's getting ganged up on now by all of our other famous fans.
The picture that's got Matt Laetitia in it has got a guy sat behind the Prime Minister.
It's you, isn't it?
Looks very much like me, but it's not me.
With your headphones on.
No, I don't wear headphones at games, so it's a generic.
Well, maybe it was Ralph.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, yeah, we miss all the Ralph comparisons these days. But Russell Martin's a bit too young for me to make an attempt to look like him. But anyway, moving on. So that's the 3 games. Like I say, we've won the lot. I think this is certainly the first episode of TSP where we've been talking about 3 wins.
3 wins, yeah.
So now we move on to the next game, which is a preview of Norwich City on New Year's Day, and we are joined by Connor Southwell from the PinkUn to help preview the Norwich game coming up on New Year's Day. I think you're the first repeat guest that we've had on as well, which is good. So thanks for not blacklisting us and coming back. So Connor, from the outside, Norwich City. It's been a very up and down season. Started well. Thought you looked very good at St Mary's in an attacking sense, anyway. It's kind of fallen away since. I seem to remember that when I spoke to you last time, or when we spoke to you last time, I thought you looked a decent side on paper. I like the sort of like experience running through the side, and you yourself weren't so sure at that point. So basically, how has it been this season?
No, well, first and foremost, thanks for having me back on. I think I'm one away from a hat-trick ball now, so that's nice. How's it been? I mean, how long have you got? Really, we could sit here for an hour with me dissecting all of it. But yeah, it's not been great. I think that's probably what I would say. I think Norwich and probably David Wagner more widely are very streaky, and I think you've kind of seen that within their results. They started really well, and the mood after that sort of opening 8 games or so was really positive. And I think it was, okay, yeah, this might work. And all of those experienced signings might add all of the elements that Norwich City have been missing. Then they had a terrible autumn where they won 2-11 or 1-10. There were 4 straight defeats within that. And David Wagner seemed to be really on the brink, really, of losing his job. And then the last sort of 10 games or so, they had 1 defeat in 8, which kind of rescued him a little bit and stabilised their season, pushed them to within 2 points of the top 6. And then it's been a really poor festive period where they've been beaten by West Brom and Millwall and deserved to lose both games. So, and it's worth adding sort of over that 8-game period. I think they beat QPR, Huddersfield, Sheffield Wednesday, Bristol City, who were at that stage right at the start of the kind of Liam Manning experiment, and Cardiff before the international break, where they didn't perform very well but had a really good kind of 10-minute spell. So the performances haven't really altered. They haven't been playing very well now for a significant period of time, probably really since August and that run at the start of the campaign. So yeah, it's been difficult. It's been a difficult season, and I think a lot of supporters and probably Monday's game feels quite important for David Wagner, because I think if Norwich produce the level of performance that we've seen, particularly over the last 2 games, but probably over longer than that, then I think fans are going to be very quick to vent their frustration at him and at the powers that be for keeping him in post.
What's the sort of general feeling towards sort of David Wagner at the moment? Is there a Wagner out hashtag kicking around at the moment, or are people not quite there yet in general?
Yeah, I think Wagner out was trending last night for quite a period of time. So yeah, I think and you can never speak for all fans, but the feeling I get from the majority of supporters is that they want a change, and I think they wanted a change sort of towards the end of that really bad run in the autumn, where Norwich weren't producing performances and results were really poor as well. And they had kind of back-to-back defeats against Sunderland. He looked absolutely broken after that game, to be honest with you. And I think sort of from in the job that I do and speaking to him afterwards, I think there was a feeling of, this feels like it's probably it, and it wasn't. And then they lost to Blackburn 3-1 at home, and that was a terrible day, really. And that definitely felt like it was it, and it wasn't. And then the Cardiff game came, and again he's kind of been aided a little bit because Norwich have had a change in sporting director. So Stuart Webber, who was at the club for 7 years, has left, and he's been replaced by Ben Napper, who was loans manager at Arsenal. But they had this kind of weird handover period where Webber was still in the role and Napper wasn't quite in the role, and that kind of spanned this autumn period. And because of fans' frustrations towards Wagner, sort of namely, they accelerated Napper's arrival and Webber's departure. And since really his arrival, he's kind of been talking about the need for an assessment period. But that assessment period has coincided with a run of 1 defeat in 8. So I don't think fans' views on him have been shifted that much by the run of form that we saw, because, as I said, the performances haven't really changed. They've just been playing teams who are struggling rather than maybe teams who are slightly better. And you look at their record, they haven't beaten any side in the top 6 this season. And they're struggling for consistency. And I think there is kind of a debate at the moment. Is this squad just bang average, or is this a coach not being able to get enough out of this group of players? And without changing the head coach, I don't think you can ever really find the answer to that. But it does feel like a group of Norwich City players that should be a lot closer to the top six than they are at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I assume the expectations at the start of the season were to, playoffs at least, and make a run at the top two if possible. Is this your second season in the Championship or third?
Second. Yeah.
So are there still? I mean, so it's next year's the desperate one, isn't it? That's the end of the parachute payments if it doesn't happen.
So this is the final year, because Norwich, obviously, if you go
if you
go up then straight down,
effect.
you only get 2 years.
Yeah.
So Norwich are in their final year. So there is kind of a financial imperative to it, which adds to it, I guess. But you're right. I think to have kind of 2 years of parachute payments, and last year they finished 13th, so in the bottom half essentially. And this year, I mean, they're sat 13th again at this moment in time, 5 points from the top six, and have very mid-table numbers in terms of their results. So to not be in around the top six for a season and a half essentially, with parachute payments, which the majority of clubs at this level don't have, I mean, it's a failure, isn't it? There's no real other way to dress it up.
Yeah. Okay. On the pitch, when we played at St Mary's, Jonathan Rowe caused us all sorts of problems last time. From what I remember, he was sort of largely excellent in the early part of the season, scored a lot of goals. Has that continued, or has he sort of tailed off a bit, been injured, whatever? Anyone else particularly from an attacking sense to look out for? I know, have you still got Ashley Barnes? Is he still there?
He is still there. Yes, yeah, he is. He's still there and kicking, which is good in both senses of the word. John Rowe is the main one, really. Interestingly, he didn't start on Friday against Millwall because David Wagner has felt that he's not quite been at the level that maybe he needs to be. He had a bit of a heel injury and he's come back from that. And even though he's scored goals, scored one against Sheffield Wednesday, obviously a double against Ipswich, which has made him even more popular than perhaps he was already. His performances haven't been perhaps where they were. It's not been that great in possession. I mean, at Portman Road, he only had 15 touches of the ball, and but to drop him completely felt a little bit drastic. I think that's fair
bizarre.
to say.
Yeah, Ruben Steller's level management. He's scoring goals, got 10 or 11 this season. He's going to go to the Premier League for 20 million in the summer, regardless of what happens. To drop him because he hasn't been great in possession, it's bizarre.
Correct, and also to drop him in favour of Onel Hernandez, who hasn't scored a goal all season, and hasn't scored at Carrow Road for 4 years, and Christian Fashnax, who's really faded after a bright start as well, and and that kind of maybe sums up where Norwich are and why Norwich fans are so frustrated by David Wagner at the moment. And that wasn't the only change. I mean, he made a few changes. I think he made 5 changes on Friday, really, and also dropped Shane Duffy, who has been in a pretty decent run of form, although not maybe had the best season, but wasn't in the matchday squad. Kenny McLean, who's been playing as a centre back, kind of pushed into midfield, so he changed both of the centre backs, all of the front four. It was a really peculiar
It sounds like
a really peculiar situation.
Man just throwing things at the wall and hoping some of it sticks. But
from a Saints perspective, though, the 2-2 draw with Ipswich was massive for us, obviously, because I think it sort of started there what could be a lengthy decline. I think they haven't won a game since, have they? And Saints have sort of made up 7 or 8 points on them, so that was a great result from our point of view.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure how it happened, but I'm glad it did.
Well, I mean, if Ipswich on the run of form that they've been on in the last year and a bit can't beat Norwich, when Norwich are kind of in this sort of slump that they've been on, when are they ever going to beat them? 15 years since they've beaten you now.
That's right. Yeah,
mad.
14 years, and I know that their sort of supporters have made a big play about Norwich fans overly celebrating the draw, but it's not really about the draw. It's about preserving the record. And like you say, it was the record. It was the fact that I think a lot of people associated with Norwich probably went in that game thinking that they were going to get absolutely battered, and that record was going to go. And it's been a really dismal year, and the fact it wasn't and it didn't, I think it's quite funny more than anything else.
I think everyone gets petty when it comes to local rivals. I mean, we never play ours, so it's no, I think it's perfectly excusable to be petty about that. Steve, it was a slightly mental 4-4 draw last time. we are obviously a better side now than we were then. Do you think, we should win this, or is this a very much a tough game where a point would be decent?
I think it's one where, on paper, and I'm sure the bookies' odds will reflect this, on paper we should win. Particularly we're a better defensive side now. What is it? We've conceded 10, I think, in the last 15 games now. Maybe even more games than that. Whereas we'd conceded 20 in our first 9. So it's the improvement at the back has been stark. And going forward, we're scoring the same amount, if not more. So I think we're in good shape. But I think you always kind of fancy that Norwich away is a ground where we've not had a great record historically. There's been some kind of trademark wins. So that
lockdown.
Insane, that 5-4 one back in 94, 95.
For more time that.
Way before your time, Alfie. And
I was thinking to lockdown, the first game of
first game back in lockdown when we won 3-0. But again, that was a Norwich side that was in the middle of a what was it, 14 defeats on the bounce or something absolutely mental. So I kind of don't really read too much into that one. But generally when we've gone to Carrow Road as equals, we've found it hard. We don't win there often. So I wouldn't be completely disappointed with a draw. I think as you say, we've made up ground on made up loads of ground on Ipswich. We've made up a little bit of ground on Leicester over the period. So we've done some good work here, and actually a point isn't the worst thing possible. But I think, the team will definitely be going there thinking we can win this. And you've then got that situation where a manager is under pressure. If you're an away team that turns up and you crank up the pressure even more, all of a sudden the players will start doing something stupid. There will be misplaced passes. You'll get players feeling the pressure, and you make mistakes. And that's kind of the ideal scenario for us, is that we do something good early on, get into the lead, force the atmosphere at Carrow Road to go downwards, and then you've kind of got the control of the game, and you've got Norwich exactly where you want them. And it's then hopefully a case of seeing it through, and you kind of once you've got your foot on their throats, you just keep pressing. That's the theory. Whether having had, obviously everybody's in the same boat, but having had these load of games in a short space of time, whether we've got the energy to do it for another 90 minutes.
I think resting Stewie and Rebo will be in Saints' favour in that regard. They're better bring in basically a completely fresh midfield, which should help.
Yeah, that was going to be my question to you, Alfie. Do you see
that's very true.
A Rebo, Downs, Stuart Armstrong?
Well, there's a question mark over Downs, right? So we don't know if Glen Downs is going to be available yet. It's a third different illness this year, but it's a third or fourth game that he's missed for illness.
That is a bit of a concern, it must be said.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a concern, I think. So Russell Martin hasn't ruled him out. He said that he might well be available, but he said that he's not going to take any risks with it. So that, to me, was a sort of a subtle Russell Martin-sized warning that he's not going to be available. But we'll have to wait and see. He wasn't going to play against Walsall anyway, so he would have had sort of 10, 11 days off from playing at that point. And he's going to be seeing a nutritionist about it. But he ate raw chicken liver at the start of the season. I think that's a mental thing to do. I think that has not served him well, as Russell Martin said. But it has been two different illnesses. So he missed Watford through flu, which a lot of the squad had. But he was the worst affected. And this one is a sort of digestive illness again as well. So it's not the same thing, but it's a bit of a concern for sure.
Yeah. To you, Connor, we avoided this question last time, but you, of course, have one of our former players. It's a dangerous question for me to be asking. So, how's Angus Gunn doing these days?
Fantastically well. Yeah, he's been brilliant this season actually, and certainly Millwall on Friday night made at least 2 3, maybe even saves that prevented the scoreline being significantly worse than it has been. And actually, there was a spell that kind of coincided with Norwich's really poor run in the autumn, where he was injured and they had to play George Long, their deputy, and the drop in quality was sizable. Really, basically, anyone that shot from anywhere, it was finding itself in the net. So that wasn't particularly favourable, but yeah, he's been excellent, developing into a really good goalkeeper. He's become a bit more rounded at Norwich. I think a criticism I always had of him is he wasn't that commanding, never really kind of took crosses particularly well. There's been signs certainly in the last few months or so that he's a bit more willing to do that, and whether that's because he's now kind of a bit more comfortable in his own skin as Norwich's first choice, I don't know. There was obviously for a long time here a real battle with Tim Krul that he kind of saw off, which I think was massively important. And then obviously they moved Tim Krul on in the summer, and that was a massive kind of show of confidence in him. But I think he's one of the best goalkeepers in this division at this moment in time, certainly in terms of shot stopping. And actually, I think if Norwich don't get up this season, which is looking highly unlikely, he's going to have a year left on his contract in the summer, and I'd be shocked if there wasn't Premier League interest, because he's obviously now internationally recognised, particularly if he can go and have a really good Euros. I know his time with Southampton was pretty checkered, and there was obviously the 9-0 defeat, but
yeah,
I think he deserves a lot of praise for how he's kind of responded to that in his own personal career, and he's shown a lot of resilience, and I think at Norwich he's found a place where he's very comfortable to kind of rebuild himself. And I think he now looks, in my view, a lot more confident and a lot more assured than he did when he came back to Norwich permanently a couple of summers ago.
Yeah, I'm actually pleased, because he was in goal for the, as you said, the 9-0 defeat against Leicester, and that would kill many people, especially goalkeepers. And he was, I think we forget how young he was at the time. I think he was only 21 or something at the time. And so it's good that he's moved. Is he first choice for Scotland now?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Excellent
I must
stuff.
say, I played in goal. I lost more than 9 at a couple of occasions. I'm still here. So.
Okay. We don't let people go without doing the prediction game. So Steve has hedged between us winning and a draw. So Steve, what do you reckon? Colours to the mast.
I think if we get an early goal, I think we win it probably fairly comfortably. It's just how we start the game is key. We're a better side than we were in August. And quite frankly, I think Norwich are a weaker side than they were in August. 2-0 win.
Good stuff. Alfie?
Yeah, I think just looking at the last 3 Norwich results, they've all been 2-0. So I'm going to go for a clean sheet as well and go back to the 1-0 for Saints, obviously.
Okay. I hate how many times I end up agreeing with Steve, and we're both crap, and we're both bottom of the prediction table that we do. So I don't know how. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 win as well, for the same reasons. I think Norwich are in a difficult spot at the moment, and we are obviously flying. And whilst we all know that's going to end one day, I don't see it ending in this particular game, given the players that we can bring back into the side. And the extra energy we'll have. So, 2-0 win for us as well. So, Connor, feel free to tell us all to shut up and predict a Norwich 3-0 win if that's what you want to do.
I'd have to be on something, I think, to predict that. I was going to agree with you and Steve until you said you were bottom of the predictions league or whatever it is.
We're terrible, mate.
No, I mean, to be fair, Russell Martin brought his Swansea side to Norwich the tail end of last season, and they were comfortable 3-0 winners that day, and basically played Norwich off the park. Very different, because Norwich were in a dismal run of form, bit of an end of era, lots of players leaving. They're not much better now, to be fair, but I think Southampton and Russell Martin, that's steeped in narrative as it is with him coming back. But the type of side that Southampton are, technical, want loads of the ball. They tend to be the teams that Norwich City struggle against from a defensive perspective, but also they are relatively okay in terms of transition. So I think they will pose some kind of threat. That being said, I just don't like you guys have painted, really. I think if Southampton get the first goal, it's going to be very, very difficult for Norwich because of the crowd and because of the way I think it could go. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 Southampton win, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice
are
one.
you likely to? I mean, we struggle against teams that, like Plymouth, who set up 5-4-1 basically against us. I mean, yeah, it's an away game, so you've got more license to do that. Are Norwich likely to do that in a home game?
Yes, it won't be a back three, I wouldn't think. Famous last words, but he's not really played a back three. He did for the second half of the Boxing Day defeat to West Brom, but they were down to 10 men. He likes to play a 4-4-2 as a general rule of thumb. So I think it will be kind of 2 blocks of 4, quite rigid, and then they'll look to try and play on transition. So yeah, I think it will be quite similar, but Norwich, I'm trying to be diplomatic, aren't the best defensively. So when they try and defend, there are gaps and stuff to expose. So that shouldn't be an issue as long as Southampton are creative enough and move the ball quickly enough, which from what I've seen, they definitely will do.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Connor, for coming on. Maybe we'll see you next season. Maybe we won't.
I mean, you will.
Depends. Yeah, so thanks very much for coming back on. And after New Year's Day, good luck for the rest of the season. Thanks very much.
Yep. Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me on. Good luck for the rest of the season.
One final game to preview before next week, which we'll do briefly, is the FA Cup game against Walsall. Little quiz for you. Last time we played them was Promotion Day, May 2011 in League One, and we won 3-1 with goals from Steve. Who got the goals?
It wasn't me.
No.
Gooley.
Correct.
David Connolly.
Yeah, you've looked this up, haven't you?
No, I haven't.
It's got on his screen now.
Third one.
What's an acceptable amount of time to put off my answer now before they realise?
I don't know. Someone like Hoyvelt.
Give you a clue.
No,
it was his.
Can't be. It was Tuesday.
It was his last ever game for us.
Oh Christ!
Academy graduate.
Yeah.
Oh, Oxlade.
Last ever.
Yeah.
Correct. Before he moved on to a career as a professional substitute for the next 12 years. But yeah, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, David Connolly. What was the chant for David Connolly? He didn't like it. Do you remember that?
The back from the dead one. Yeah, he didn't.
He's back from the dead.
Understandably, he didn't like that one. Yeah, can't think why. Perennially injured player. Yeah, just dreadful.
So anyway, that was a great day, a great atmosphere. It won't be quite the same atmosphere on FA Cup third round day, I'm sure. Walsall have got to the third round by beating 2 non-league sides, Sheppey United, 4-1 of Isthmian League South East Division, which is level 8. In the second round, they beat Alfreton Town 1-0 after a replay, and they're from National League North, which is level 6. They currently sit 13th in League 2. Alfie, you've already kind of hinted at it. Are you expecting huge team changes? With the likes of Sam Ammo, Tyler Dibbling, maybe Joe Lumley getting a game?
Yeah, so Russell Mine obviously said about Flynn Downs that the plan was for him to never play against Walsall, and I would assume that there'll be quite a few in that regard. I was actually hoping it'd be Alfreton Town that we'd face, but Walsall's fine. And I do actually like the FA Cup third round. I must admit, I remember last year the Coventry game wasn't the best game in the world, but Willie Caballero, well, maybe that was 2 seasons ago now. Willie Caballero was big on the day, and I think it's quite nice to play different teams. There will hopefully be a chance for someone like Tyler Diblin. I spoke to Tyler a couple of weeks ago now, and I think he was like he'd already earmarked that one in the diary for a chance to sort of show Russell Martin what he's about. So maybe he'd already been told by the manager that would be when his chance would come. Sam Allen is the same. We've had a couple of games now where we've been 3-4 goals ahead, and we haven't seen them come off the bench when maybe they could have done.
Yeah.
So I imagine Tyler, Sam will start. Someone like Sekou Mara will start the game as well for sure. And then, like I say, Shea Charles. I imagine Jack Stevens will start. Joe Lumley could get a first game. I'd like to see Joe Lumley come in rather than Alex McCarthy. I know they're both on a contract here until the end of the season, so maybe they both leave. Doesn't really matter, but I just feel like we've seen Alex McCarthy in a Saints shirt enough times for us all to move on from that. So I'd like to see Lumley get a chance. Yeah, there should be rotation, really, shouldn't there? I mean, you should be able to make 6 or 7 changes and still win the game. But I do think it is important to win the game. I know it's only the FA Cup, and the important one is obviously the league. But like we saw last season, losing to Grimsby under Ruben Sellers, it's demoralising, it's embarrassing, and you can't really afford to do it. So I think you do have to still go into it trying to win the game. But it'd be nice to see a couple of young lads get a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in seeing us obviously get through this round, and then I would like to play one of the sort of bottom half Premier League sides to see where we are, but it's probably not gonna happen. So that was my question to you, Steve. Really, do you think if we get through this round that we will take this competition seriously, or do you think we'll tank it at some stage and just sort of concentrate on the league?
I think we'll take it vaguely. We'll take it as seriously as the level of opposition dictates, I think. So I think, as you say, against Walsall, mid-table in League Two, you would expect that more or less any combination of first-team players that we have in a proper formation that knows the system that we're playing should be able to do the business against Walsall. Get through to the next round. Then, I mean, if you get another lower league draw, then you can do the same again, and it kind of works in terms of getting fringe players useful minutes at a competitive level.
Yeah,
because
it's different to Gillingham as well, isn't it? Because like everybody who's in the squad now is here on the bus, whereas Gillingham, it was a load of players who didn't want to be here and couldn't wait to leave. So that was why it looked like that.
Yeah, and I think if you're able to use the cup games to keep the fringe players fresh and I mean interested is probably the wrong word, so I think everybody's kind of engaged with what we're doing now. But certainly at the start of the season, that, as you say, that was an issue. But yeah, you keep the fringe players match sharp, then all of a sudden, I mean, we're obviously already seeing a hell of a lot of impact from those subs, but maybe that impact is even greater. And you potentially ask questions of whether they should be getting starts in league games and more important games. So yeah, I think there are huge benefits to a cup run, not just the prestige of going far in the competition. There's a bit of finance there. I mean, not big beer, but given that there's potential sort of financial fair play question marks being raised surrounding the existence or otherwise of any sort of budget for January. I think getting games won and getting some extra cash into the bank account is not to be sniffed at, quite frankly.
Good stuff. Okay, prediction time. I'll go first for this one. I think we'll play the fringe players and we'll struggle a bit, just a little bit of cohesion. I could maybe even see us going behind and then winning it off the bench with the strong bench we will no doubt have. So I'll go for a 2-1 win in this one. Steve?
I think we'll just crush them. A lot of youth and enthusiasm, and they'll just run Walsall ragged. I think I've seen Walsall in League Two this season. Sutton, who were bottom of the league for all of the season until last week, beat them 4-0. So that kind of shows what Walsall are capable of. So I'm going for a replica. I'm going for 4-0.
Alf?
Yeah, I do actually agree with you, Glenn. I do think there'll be a little bit of cohesion, a little bit sort of to work on. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 win.
Okay, good stuff. January obviously brings the opening of the transfer window, and the silly season has started already. We seem to have been linked exclusively with wingers. I've seen David Brooks, Amad Diallo. It doesn't seem a priority position to me. So, Alfie, have you got any sort of opinion on where that's come from? Any truth in that?
Well, I think most people I've spoken to would say, no, this isn't the club, fans, I mean, would say that it probably is the priority position because they don't need any defenders. Although I suppose you could maybe argue a fullback if James Bree's injury is bad. They don't need a goalkeeper. They don't really need a midfielder. They've got a lot of competition in there. We were spoken about Smallbow and Alcaraz, some of them not starting week in, week out. And obviously the big question mark is a striker, right? But they're only going to buy a striker if Che Adams goes. And Russell Martin, at least openly to us, he keeps saying that he wants to keep Che Adams here until the end of the season. If Che is sold, they will sell him if they get a decent offer, right? Because he's going 6 months. Then they will use that money to replace him. Otherwise, I think Phil Parsons has sort of alluded to it, the club CEO, in the match programme a couple of days ago. He basically said that they're not going to be gambling the future of the club. Same message they said in the summer. They're not going to be spending silly money on players. And I think what that means is, because of financial fair play, they can't do that. So I've seen links to people like Matthias Sula for 30 million quid. He plays in Italy. Maybe I'm wrong, and if I am, I apologise, but that's not going to happen. They're not going to be spending that kind of money on anybody without a big player leaving. So I don't think it's going to be a ridiculously busy window. I think that maybe a loan for someone like David Brooks makes complete sense. Maybe there's no smoke without a fire there, Glenn. Maybe that's why. Maybe because it would make total sense. And you bring in a Nathan Teller replacement, which we were promised in August, that never happened. And we know that on deadline day, they were looking to sign Patrick Roberts. So they clearly feel that there is a spot for a winger in that squad. So maybe that's what they'll do.
Yeah. Outgoings. I was intrigued watching the warm-up on yesterday and watching Alex McCarthy pinging in corners. He now seems to, for Bazunu to catch during the warm-up, and I'm thinking, are we paying that guy X £1,000 a week to be a corner taker in warm-ups? Do you think there's any? Has he just got 6 months on his contract?
Yeah, I believe so.
Or has he got longer? So there's not really much likelihood of getting him out the door in January.
Probably not. And also, you do want 3 goalkeepers, don't you, really? As a general rule, I think Dean Thornton probably wants that amount to work with. And my lights have just gone off randomly for some reason. Obviously, I don't expect anybody to leave apart from Mason Holgate. I do think that he probably will go. It makes total sense. The way that the club have spoken about it so honestly, Russell Martin, and sort of addressed that it could happen, to me makes me think that it will happen, because why would you talk about it otherwise? There's been loads of noise about that, hasn't there? So I imagine Mason will leave. The club probably won't replace him. If they do, it'll be somebody cheap or on loan. I would like to think there won't be too many outgoings, because if there is, it means somebody's bid 25 million for Carl Walker-Peters and they feel they can't turn it down, and we don't want that to happen.
Okay. Finally, as it's the last pod of the year, got interesting tweet came into the Total Saints pod Twitter account today from a guy called Sean Stroud, who he sounded like he was being a bit of a masochist, and he listened to the first pod of 2023, which is TSP 216, which was the Nottingham Forest home game, where, despite being managed by one of the best managers in Europe, we smashed the ball up into the floodlights for 90 minutes and lost 1-0. We've gone from that to a year later, 17 match unbeaten run. So this is an impossible one for you, Steve. Can you give us a sort of like a quick summary of the differences, sort of like in the club as a whole, between then and now?
Jesus. I mean, it feels, well, actually, it's strange, because actually the fans were united back then, the fans are united now. So actually, have things really changed at all? But no, I mean, obviously, the style of play is just laughably different. The fact that everything was being launched into the floodlights at the earliest opportunity in that Forest game, which was, I mean, I still maintain, I think we both said at the time, didn't we, Glenn, that performance alone was a sacking offence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, it's just, I mean, it does kind of upset me that Nathan Jones is technically still a Southampton FC employee while we're being quite good. So I'd quite like him to take a job.
I'm sure he's trying to take credit for it somewhere.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely no doubt whatsoever. But yeah, just the difference in tempo, the fact that the players seem like, A, they know what they're doing, and B, they seem to be enjoying it.
That's the key one, I think.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, while like we all have jobs to do, we enjoy and we don't enjoy them to varying extents at varying times. But I think as long as you're sort of happy in your role, then your performance is always going to be a little bit better. Whereas if you're sort of down the dumps, your manager's being a bit of a pain in the background and this sort of thing. And the same extends to football players. They're not, I mean, yes, they're paid absolutely astronomical amounts of money compared to Joe Public, but the kind of the sort of work dynamics are still the same. And the working environment that you're in is a key factor in your performance. And some players are able to put it to one side, most aren't. And that's kind of where we are, in that we weren't in a working environment that was conducive to anybody being any good, because you had useless management, both at first team level and at board level, quite frankly. It seems as if the people that were particularly involved at board level have shuffled off into the background somewhat, hopefully. I mean, that remains to be seen next month, of course. But the working environment seems to be wholly positive at the moment. You're not hearing any leaks of any disturbances, any issues with people. Whereas literally every day during the Nathan Jones stuff, during the Nathan Jones era, there was a story. There was something coming out of either someone's not happy, or there's been this sort of argument, or someone's been left out and they've taken it badly, and all this sort of stuff. We're seeing none of that now, and that is because at the end of the day, players are enjoying being where they are at the moment, and frankly, long may it continue.
I think the club have worked hard since we went to that. I'm sorry, I'm pushing you on time here, Glenn, but since we went to that tactical meeting earlier in the month, the club have, I think, have done really well and pushed hard to sort of show those behind the scenes clips. And yes, I know it's only a 10-second video, but you do actually see the manager interacting with players off the training pitch, in the dressing room, stuff like that, and you see that there is a genuine connection there. I think that's the biggest thing. I think supporters are now just being made aware of it, and it's really big. And you talk about the leaks, Steve. The club worked really hard over the summer because those leaks carried on. All summer we had sort of people not being on the bus for friendlies, people being injured for 3 months, stuff like that, coming out of the club when they didn't want it to. And they worked really hard over the summer to sort of identify where that was coming from and stop it. So the atmosphere is just 10 times better. Well, possibly. But the atmosphere is so much better. I mean, we said it when back in the summer, but even from pre-season, just going into Staplewood is a million times different now. It's totally different. Yeah, everyone's smiling, say hello to everybody. The players do the same. It's just the atmosphere is a lot better. And I think it's so much more conducive to working environment, like you said. And it's just, I think it's a really good job actually in the first sort of 5 months. And it's not just Russell Martin; so many people involved.
Yeah. Okay. And on that note, that's all for this week's episode. Thanks again to Pitter Self-Drive for sponsoring this episode. They offer cars, vans, trucks and minibuses for flexible short-term or long-term rentals with a 24-hour drop-off service. They're offering TSP listeners a 10% discount off your rental with the code TOTALSAINTS, which is all one word. You can use the code when booking online or just quote the code if you're booking over the phone. To find out more or get in touch, head to pitterselfdrive.co.uk or call 02380 474 443. Don't forget that you can follow Total Saints Podcast on all social media platforms. It's at Total Saints Pod. Each of our TSP tiers comes with its own perks, including weekly shoutouts for those patrons in our Francis Benali or Mick Channon tiers. So thank you to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, and Drew Dyer in the Francis Benali tier, and also to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Hinkston, Phil Cook, Matt Rose, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrup, Matt Hall, and Mark Littlewood in our Mick Channon tier. Thanks to Steve and Alfie. It's been a bit of a marathon effort. Thanks for putting up with me. That's it for TSP this year. We'll be back on the 7th of January with TSP 258. Thank you for watching and listening, and have a fantastic new year, and we'll see you all in 2024. That wasn't too bad, was it?
Nicely done.
God, that's over.